Ever heard of Made in Africa drones and ammunition? What if we told you African nations are now building their own military industries like drones, bullets, and artillery, not imported, but homegrown? What if we told you these countries aren't just buying weapons anymore? They are building them from scratch, training their own engineers, and exporting to the rest of the world? This can be expected from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. But what if we told you Ethiopia has just joined this revolutionary wave? But why and why now? What does it really mean? And what weapons and ammunition will be manufactured? In this video, let's find out. For decades, Africa's military landscape has been riddled with contradictions. Nations that won political independence still remain shackled by a defense economy built in the image of their colonizers. The paradox couldn't be clearer. African armies, battling insurgencies and foreign-sponsored unrest, often had to plead with the very powers that destabilized them for weapons, spare parts, and military gear. Burkina Faso provides the most revealing example. President Ibrahim Traoré, a soldier-turned-statesman, exposed how France exerted control over Burkina Faso's defense apparatus, determining not just what weapons the country could import, but from where and at what cost. The result? A slow drip of outdated equipment sold at inflated prices. In desperate moments, Burkina Faso even had to borrow arms from its neighbors, not to attack, but to survive. Traoré's rise to power was a turning point. Determined to break this dependency, he approached Western suppliers. Doors were slammed shut. Germany and the US refused to supply him with the arms needed to fight insurgency within his borders. It wasn't until he looked east, to Russia, Turkey, and China, that he accessed modern, reliable weaponry. But this struggle exposed a deeper truth. Sovereignty means little if you can't defend it on your own terms. This led to the unspoken question now rippling across African capitals. What if we stopped importing weapons altogether? What if we built them ourselves? That very question found an answer in Addis Ababa. In a historic and highly symbolic move, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed unveiled the Skywing industry, Ethiopia's first large-scale drone manufacturing plant. What began as a quiet ambition has now become a bold declaration. Africa can build its own future in the air, with precision and on its own terms. Until recently, Ethiopia, like many African nations, relied on imported drone systems from Israel, China, Iran, and the UAE. These drones, while useful, came with strings attached. Their use was often dictated by foreign policy considerations, their upgrades tied to diplomatic gestures, and their repairs delayed by international bureaucracy. Abiy decided that enough was enough. Now Ethiopia is producing its own unmanned aerial vehicles, not crude prototypes, but advanced drones equipped with artificial intelligence, high-altitude operational capacity, and anti-drone defense systems. These aren't tools of war. These are tools of deterrence. They signal that Ethiopia has the ability to monitor its own borders, strike if necessary, and secure its airspace without dialing a foreign capital. And the most powerful part? The technology isn't imported. It's engineered by Ethiopians. Young minds, trained locally, are now at the helm of Africa's next-generation defense technology. Skywing drones are already being prepared for export, signaling Ethiopia's entrance into the global drone market, a space previously dominated by countries like Turkey, Israel, and the United States. But Ethiopia wasn't done. Less than a week after unveiling its drone facility, Ethiopia stunned the continent once again, this time with firepower on the ground. In the Oromia region, Abiy Ahmed inaugurated the Homiko ammunition engineering industry, a vast manufacturing complex that now produces everything from small-caliber AK-47 bullets to heavy-duty tank artillery. Think about that. Just 3 years ago, Ethiopia was importing almost all its ammunition. Today, it's not only self-sufficient, but is already shipping arms abroad. In just 3 months, the country signed over $30 million in ammunition export deals, making it the third largest arms exporter in Africa after South Africa and Egypt. And this is not a war-driven arms race. Ethiopia's new factory also produces civilian-use ammunition, like demolition-grade charges for construction and pyrotechnic rounds for agricultural pest control. This dual-purpose approach is fueling job creation, boosting local infrastructure, and providing a model for how defense can drive development. Interestingly, the rapid transition from importer to exporter didn't happen by chance. It was a direct response to the hardships of recent years. Ethiopia, like Burkina Faso, realized that relying on foreign arms suppliers during crises often meant receiving help too late, too little, or not at all. Worse, geopolitical alliances could determine whether a country lived or bled. Prime Minister Abiy made a choice: never again. And it's clear he is not alone in that decision. Ethiopia's recent rise as a defense producer is not an isolated phenomenon. It is part of a much larger awakening spreading across the African continent, and the pulse of this awakening beats strongest in the Sahel. While Ethiopia asserts its place in East Africa, Mali and Burkina Faso have been spearheading the military independence movement in the West, setting an example of what post-colonial sovereignty can look like when backed by steel, will, and infrastructure. Under Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali is undergoing one of the most significant military transformations in its modern history. It has already announced detailed plans to construct weapons assembly lines, armored vehicle manufacturing units, and ammunition factories, all within its own borders. These aren't vague promises or policy white papers. The project is underway, and the aim is very clear: total independence from foreign military suppliers. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Today, Mali still leans on Russia and China to meet its defense needs. But leaders in Bamako are fully aware that foreign suppliers, even friendly ones, are a temporary bridge, not a foundation. Goïta's vision is not just about replacing the West with the East. It's about removing all crutches and building a military-industrial complex that is Malian in ownership, Sahelian in reach, and African in spirit. This is not a solo journey. It's part of a broader alliance of Sahel states, a growing confederation between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger that's pushing far beyond joint declarations. Together, these three nations have already expelled French military bases, canceled exploitative mining contracts, and are now turning to the next logical frontier: arms production. And it's not just for their own use. Defense strategists in the region are already talking about a shared arms network across the Sahel, one where Mali's production lines could supply Burkina Faso and Niger, where research is shared, and where borders no longer divide strength but amplify it. Burkina Faso, under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has arguably become the ideological heart of this revolution. While Mali is laying industrial foundations, it is Traoré who has lit the torch, publicly, defiantly, and without hesitation. It was Traoré who stood before a crowd, pointing to traitors on their knees, declaring that Africa will never kneel again. It is Burkina Faso that first rejected Western weapon sales and demanded respect through action, not appeal. And now, Ethiopia has joined the arc, bridging the west and the east of the continent. With its newly operational Skywing drone plant and Hamako ammunition factory, Ethiopia brings something else to the table: technological innovation, production scale, and strategic depth. It now has the capacity to support its own national defense and to export, positioning itself as the eastern flank in a growing Pan-African defense corridor. Together, these nations are creating something unthinkable a decade ago: an African military industry made by Africans, for Africans, free from foreign oversight, pricing, and permission. Therefore, to call this a military pivot would be too narrow. What we are witnessing is far more than just defense modernization. This is a cultural, economic, and ideological shift. This is about power, pride, and identity. For too long, Africa was cast in the global narrative as a recipient of charity, of weapons, of pity. It was the continent where others came to sell, to test, to dominate. But now, the narrative is flipping. In the 1980s and 90s, African leaders flew to Washington, Paris, or Brussels to ask for aid, arms, and approval. They returned with conditional loans, military leftovers, and photo ops. But today, leaders like Traoré, Goïta, and Abiy Ahmed are building drones, exporting ammunition, and forging alliances with fellow African nations, not as beggars, but as builders. This is why Traoré's words hit like thunder. Africa will no longer kneel. That statement was not rhetorical. It was practical. It was aimed at the military generals in Western war rooms, at the economic advisors who write up development aid deals that come with hidden clause, at the journalists who frame every act of African sovereignty as a military dictatorship. And above all, it was a rallying cry to African youth who had been told for generations that greatness was something to be bought from the West, not built from within. Ethiopia's drone and ammunition factories are not just facilities. They are political earthquakes. They signal a new era where Africa sets the terms, in trade, in technology, and in territorial defense. They send a message that Africa no longer needs to be invited to the table. It is building its own. Now, if this momentum holds, we may be standing at the birth of a revolutionary new chapter in African geopolitics, one where the continent begins to weave together a unified military economy rooted in sovereignty, cooperation, and innovation. Just picture this: Nigerian bullets loaded into Malian rifles, guarded by Burkina Faso drones, programmed with Ethiopian AI, all manufactured on African soil, protected by African minds. No more reliance on Brussels. No more last-minute scrambling when arms shipments are delayed. No more security assistance that comes with surveillance strings and secret clauses. Instead, African countries would form a self-sustaining military ecosystem, each contributing its strengths. Ethiopia could supply aerial and surveillance technology. Mali and Burkina Faso, with their growing defense factories, could handle mass production of small arms and armored vehicles. Niger, rich in strategic minerals, could feed the supply chain. Egypt and South Africa could share knowledge from their long-standing military sectors. And Nigeria, Kenya, Algeria, all could plug into a network built for defense, not dependence. This vision isn't far-fetched. The Alliance of Sahel states is already operational. Ethiopia has already secured export deals. The politics are aligning. The people are rallying. And as Western influence wanes, a new African pride is rising, forged not in Brussels, but in Bamako, Ouagadougou, and Addis Ababa. So the question is no longer, can Africa defend itself? It's, who will Africa choose to protect next, and on what terms? And for the first time in decades, those terms will be African. What do you think? Can African countries be really independent when their armies rely on foreign weapons? Do you support a united African initiative for a massive arms factory building which ensures African power is independent? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on what if other African countries join this bid to manufacture their own weapon at home. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.